So we have some news when it comes to the update of Sami Callihan's future in Impact Wrestling. And if you're an Impact Wrestling fan and if you're a Sami Callihan fan, it's good news because Impact Wrestling have re-signed Sami Callihan to a new deal. Yes, Sami Callihan has signed a new contract with Impact Wrestling. Sami Callihan is not going anywhere. The former Impact World Champion, of course, was set to become a free agent at the stroke of midnight last night, the same as Ethan Page, a fellow Impact Wrestling star. But it's not going to be the same case as it is for Ethan Page because Sami Callihan has re-signed, as he announced last night that he had signed a new 2-year deal with Impact Wrestling. Callihan stated in the tweet it was for, quote, big money, and Callihan did note that he had had offers to work for other companies too. Now, this is no real surprise, really. Everyone knew that Sami Callihan was going to re-sign. I think if you look at the options available to him, if you looked at what was in front of him, it was very obvious that Sami Callihan was going to stay with Impact. Furthermore, it was reported widely by the likes of Mike Johnson, a PW Insider, Sean Ross Sapp at Fightful, and a variety of other sources that Sami Callihan was expected to re-sign with Impact Wrestling. It took a little bit of time for him to sign that new deal, but he is staying with Impact Wrestling at least for the next 2 years. This is what Sami Callihan had to say in his tweet. He said, quote, "Today marks when I would have been a free agent. I just re-signed with Impact Wrestling 2 years for big money. I got other offers, but I don't give a damn. This is my company. I made this company. I will be champion again in 2021. Hashtag the draw." Now, Callahan, of course, as he mentioned, is a former Impact World Champion after joining Impact Wrestling in late 2017. The Draw will face his longtime rival, former Impact World Champion as well, Eddie Edwards, this coming Tuesday on the first Impact of 2021 on Access TV. And as I mentioned, this is hardly shocking news or revolutionary news because we all really know this was coming. Even if we hadn't had the reports coming out of the likes of PW Insider and Fightful and Wrestling Inc. and the Wrestling Observer newsletter, even if we hadn't had those reports and stories that Sami Callihan was expected to re-sign, I think most people, if you're a fan of Impact Wrestling, if you're a fan of the inner workings of the business, you would have seen this one coming. The writing was certainly on the wall that Sami Callihan was going to re-sign with the company. But in the just grand scheme of things, it's great to see a re-signing, right? Because all of these rumours at the moment with people potentially leaving the company, whether it's Ethan Page, Taya Valkyrie, Moose, Rich Swann, Rosemary, Willie Mack, other names, because there are a lot of contracts in Impact Wrestling that either have just expired over the last 24 hours or are due to expire in the first quarter of 2021. There's a lot of concern, confusion as to who is going to be staying and who is going to be going out of the door when it comes to Impact Wrestling in the future. What is the Impact Wrestling roster actually going to look like as we head into 2021 now? What's that going to look like? So, with the news that other people have left and other people might be leaving, it's good to see that Impact Wrestling have managed to sign at least one person to a new contract, and it's a big name. It's a big name because Sami Callihan, of course, is an Impact Wrestling former world champion, and I think given that he's going to be around for 2 years, given that, look, if you look at the roster, I think there's a high chance that Sami Callihan is going to be a world champion once again. I think I've said this lots of times here, that Impact Wrestling right now, they're certainly missing that top person on the roster. Now, is Sami Callihan going to be the top babyface in Impact Wrestling? Absolutely not. He's just not going to be that top babyface in Impact Wrestling. He is a very, very good heel. I think he kind of turned babyface over the spring and summer, didn't he, with the whole Ken Shamrock deal and the Ken Shamrock partnership, but quickly turned heel again once he turned once again on Eddie Edwards and then had the Ken Shamrock feud with Eddie Edwards, Sami Callihan in the corner, and now he's back doing the feud with Eddie Edwards again, attacking the eye, verbally assaulting Eddie Edwards' wife Alicia as well. He's a heel, and he's one of their top heels in Impact Wrestling, and I think that's why he's going to be the Impact World Champion again, is because they don't have too many top talents right at the top of the card. And knowing that Sami Callihan is going to be around for 2 years, you would suspect that that means the title is going to come back around to him eventually. Because by the time that even his contract expires with Impact Wrestling, this new one, 2023, he would have been around with the company for almost 6 years. He'll be a veteran on that roster. He is Mr. Impact Wrestling. He is trying to forge the path of other people that stayed with Impact Wrestling or TNA for many, many years, whether it's AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle, etc. Now, is Sami Callihan on their level? Absolutely, I don't think he will ever be. I don't even think he would say he ever is. But he now has this close association with Impact Wrestling. I would say Sami Callihan now will be widely known as an Impact Wrestling guy for the length that he spent with the company. And the greatest success he's had in his career is with Impact Wrestling, winning a world championship. So why can't he win another one in the future? I think it's inevitable. Now, he said other offers. that he had other offers from other companies. Look, I'm sure some companies might have spoken to him. Did he have a variety of other offers available to him? I'm not sure about that. And again, I don't have any insider information. This is just guesswork on my part. Maybe that's wrong of me, but let's look at the options that potentially would have been available to him. Were WWE or NXT interested? I doubt it. You know, he was with NXT for a brief period of time. He had the whole hacking gimmick there, and reportedly Triple H didn't like that gimmick. I don't think he liked being in WWE or NXT either. He requested his release because he didn't like how it worked there. So WWE NXT I don't think was an option to him. MLW, we know how that ended there in MLW. Of course, Jim Cornette doesn't work for MLW anymore, but I don't know if he has the greatest relationship with Court Bauer over there. So maybe MLW wasn't an offer. What about the NWA? Well, it's a possibility, but I don't know if they're signing people at the moment. Ring of Honor, I mean, maybe he did have an offer with Ring of Honor. We've seen EC3 go from Impact to ROH this year, so that might have been a possibility. I don't know if he would have made as good a money as he is in Impact Wrestling right now with Ring of Honor. It might have been an offer, though. I mean, I can't discredit that one. And AEW, I don't know. I think potentially AEW... I think the issue is, if AEW had made Sami Callihan an offer, I think he would have gone. Because if they got into a bidding war with Impact, I think AEW would have won that. Not to say that Impact don't have money, because they do. Anthem's a very wealthy company, and people kind of sleep on the budget that Impact Wrestling does actually have. They do have a substantial budget for talent and a variety of other things. So if it did get in a bidding war, I think AEW would always win, but Impact would push AEW quite far up in that bidding war, so to speak. But the only thing I would think that would be potentially a pull for AEW to consider to bring in a Sami Callihan would be the Jon Moxley connection, wouldn't it? It's the Switchblade conspiracy from their time in CZW and on the independent scene. We've seen Sami Callihan tease it on social media as well. That would, to me, would have been maybe the only reason for AEW to bring Sami Callihan in. And quite frankly, if AEW had made a strong enough play for Sami Callihan, he would have gone. So my point being, yes, I'm sure maybe he did get a couple of offers, but I think obviously Impact Wrestling was the best offer, and I'm glad that he stayed with Impact Wrestling. I think he's a core part of the foundation of Impact Wrestling now. I want to see guys that stay with the company for a long time. Obviously, part of the problem with Impact Wrestling being a smaller company and having companies like WWE and AEW and New Japan be bigger companies than Impact Wrestling is you kind of have this revolving door scenario in Impact Wrestling that talents will stick around for 1, 2, 3 years. Once they build up a bit of a reputation, WWE or AEW gets interested and they go to the bigger company. And I understand that that's how pro wrestling works, but for talents like Sami Callihan, who, if they go to WWE, if they go to AEW, it's highly likely they get lost in the shuffle. Why wouldn't you stay with Impact Wrestling for longer? And as I said, you can make good money with Impact Wrestling in 2021, so why not stay? So I'm very glad to see that he is staying with the company. Now, in terms of those AEW connections to the likes of Jon Moxley, whilst he has signed a contract with Impact Wrestling and he's staying with Impact Wrestling for at least the next 2 years, that doesn't mean, of course, that he won't make an AEW appearance in the future, because we know the relationship that's ongoing right now, the AEW and Impact Wrestling working relationship. It's absolutely a possibility that in addition to Kenny Omega going back and forth between Impact and AEW, and possibly the Good Brothers going back and forth from AEW and Impact Wrestling, we absolutely could see Sami Callihan do the exact same. So why not in the future? We might see Sami Callihan on an episode of AEW on Dynamite on Wednesdays on TNT. We might see Sami Callihan at a future AEW pay-per-view doing a lights-out match or something of that nature with Jon Moxley. If Jon Moxley doesn't have a lot to do in the future, which he always will in AEW, but if he wants to do something different, why not do like sort of a reuniting with Sami Callihan and having a run at the tag team titles? It would be a lot of fun seeing the Switchblade connection or Switchblade conspiracy theory, whatever it's called, go into AEW and have a run at the tag team titles. I think that would be a lot of fun. And just because he's with Impact Wrestling, it doesn't mean that can't happen in the future, which is, again, I think was a pull for him signing with Impact Wrestling. Impact can say, look at all we're doing. Look at the relationship we have with AEW right now. Look at all the great things and the ratings that were strong at the end of the year. We're doing the numbers we were doing prior to the pandemic. Imagine once we get out of that and things go back to normal again, hopefully, fingers crossed soon, the sky's really the limit when it comes to Impact Wrestling. So I think that's another reason why he would have signed with the company once again. Now, what's he going to do in the future? Well, of course, he's got this Eddie Edwards feud going up, and they're going to hopefully have the blow-off match on Impact Wrestling on Tuesday. I've said this before, so it's nothing really new, but I just think I'm glad this is the blow-off match and this is the final match in the feud on Tuesday. Not that I have anything against it, and not that I think the matches are bad or the feud's bad. Look, it's a historic feud in Impact Wrestling. It goes all the way back to 2017 when Sami Callihan was first there, and the baseball bat to the face and the injury, the botch, and they've done it They've done everything they can. It feels to me like they've squeezed every last drop of juice out of this storyline, whether it's turning babyface, turning heel, getting Ken Shamrock involved, getting Eddie Edwards' wife involved, another attack with the baseball bat. It just feels like, okay, you've done everything you can with it. Let's move on to other things. Rivalries are great, and historic rivalries are great, but once you start revisiting them over and over and over again, it does lose what made it a bit special in the future. And I get it that they're trying to play up that this is historic and these two will always be fighting, this will always be bad blood doesn't disappear. I get that, but once you make up and then break up and make up and break up again, it just feels like, you know, you're kind of clutching at straws slightly, and you just need to move on something different creatively. It does feel a little bit like, to me, we've got so much going on. We've got all of these TV tapings. We've got this stuff with AEW going on as well. We'll just put Sammy and Eddie back together for a couple of months. Then once things calm down a little bit, we'll focus on something else. It kind of feels like that. And I think the thing that I think should be explored a bit more when it comes to Sami Callihan and Impact Wrestling right now is the partnership with Ken Shamrock. And I know they've explored it in terms of having matches, and I know they've explored it in terms of tagging together at Slammiversary for the tag titles. They lost, and they've been tagging on and off with Impact. Ken Shamrock is suspended right now, of course. But I would love to see that expanded more. I would love to see them tag up and win the tag team titles in the future. And when it comes to Sami Callihan as well, and I think this is really important about him re-signing with the company, is of course he has so much history with the company at this point, whether it's being a world champion, whether it is his feud with Eddie Edwards, and now this stuff with Ken Shamrock and the hacker gimmick and all that kind of stuff. He does have a lot of history with the company, and at this point, I think at this point, like most people would say, I can see him being with the company for a long, long time now. Not because he can't go anywhere else, not because there aren't options to him anywhere else, because there are always options, more so just because he loves the company. He mentioned it in that tweet. He feels like he's helped build the company, and he certainly has had a massive factor in the rebuild of the reputation and momentum they've certainly had over the last couple of years. Sami Callihan has to be considered as a factor during that, because he was there and he was a world champion during that period of time. So especially under the regime of Don Callis and Scott D'Amore, Sami Callihan's had a very influential factor and a very influential skewing this movement and skewing this momentum and reputation that Impact Wrestling are starting to rebuild. So I think he'll be with Impact Wrestling for the long haul because he loves the company. I think it's also very interesting, and this kind of touches on the situation right now of Ethan Page, Taya Valkyrie, and those other names I mentioned where their contract expires in early 2021 in this first quarter of this year, is that it's interesting when Sami Callihan re-signed. Now, he says and claims in that tweet that he re-signed on the very last day, on December 31st. Now, whether or not that actually is true or not, you never know. He might have signed a week ago, it might have just been announced today. Nevertheless, it's interesting that he signed on the very last day, if it is true what he's saying, because there's always this discussion right now, isn't there, about people leaving Impact, whether it's now, whether it's next month or the month after that, or first quarter of 2021, like I said, about people potentially leaving Impact Wrestling and contracts expiring. I mentioned before here on the channel, contract disputes and contract negotiations, especially in pro wrestling, but just in life, are very, very drawn out, and they tend to go to the last minute. And sometimes they even work without a contract for a long period of time. That's not just in Impact Wrestling, that's in WWE. The example is Rey Mysterio this year. For a period of time over the summer, Rey Mysterio was working without a WWE contract, and he was on a handshake deal. And that's in the WWE, that's in the big leagues. So it happens in Impact Wrestling too. You can work without a contract for a while, or your contract is signed, your contract extension is signed at the very last minute. And this could absolutely happen whether it comes to Taya Valkyrie, Ethan Page, Moose, Willie Mack, Rich Swann, Rhino. There's other names that have been put out there as well. It absolutely could be the case that their contract negotiations go on and on and on and on and on to the very last second about trying to find out, you know, if they do re-sign with Impact Wrestling or not. So I think this is going to potentially be par for the course for all of these contract negotiations coming up in the future. But nevertheless, it is really good to see Impact Wrestling re-signing people. As I mentioned, it doesn't look good, obviously, if you've got all of these talents leaving Impact Wrestling. It doesn't look good if in a short period of time you have Ethan Page, the Rascals, Taya Valkyrie, potentially some other people leaving. It kind of gives the impression that people are jumping ship, if you will, and maybe the company is on a bit of a downturn. So it does make a statement that Impact Wrestling are signing new people. They're getting over the line, and they're getting people to put pen to paper and actually re-sign these extensions. So signing Sami Callihan, re-signing him is very, very positive. As I mentioned, what does he do after the Eddie Edwards feud and blow off this coming Tuesday. I would hope he goes with the tag team titles. I do think there's more story to tell with the Shamrock and Callahan partnership. Whether that's a feud with Shamrock and Callahan against the Good Brothers, whether that's Shamrock and Callahan against the Motor City Machine Guns, there's certainly options there. So I think that's something that I would really like to see going forward in the future. I would also like to see Sami Callihan get back involved with the X Division or something like that. If he's not going after a world title, go to the X Division. I've been a big proponent here on the channel of trying to rebuild that X Division, trying to get some talent back in there, trying to get some eyeballs back on it and put it back in the main event scene. How do you do that? You have a former world champion become the X Division champion. You have a former world champion, someone with credibility, someone with a reputation like Sami Callihan, get involved in the X Division, get the X Division back into the main event. I think that could be a lot of fun. Also, potentially, Sami Callihan, what if he gets involved with Kenny Omega? As I mentioned, my big prediction for Impact Wrestling this year is that Kenny Omega will become the Impact World Champion. And if he becomes the Impact World Champion, maybe he'll have a couple of defenses. Who knows? Maybe he'll even face Sami Callihan in the future. Anything certainly is possible. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Sami Callihan re-signing with Impact Wrestling? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So get involved with the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.